cakes, and today we're going to learn about piping tips and their different designs. First, I'm going to cut out a bunch of little cakes using this pastry ring, and you can also use a biscuit cutter if you have it. I'm just going to make a whole bunch of little cakes, and then I'm just going to put them in the fridge so that there's less crumbs getting all over the place when I start piping. I'm going to use a large coupler for my larger tips and then a standard coupler for my regular tips. And I'll put a link below for my tutorial on how to actually use piping bags and hold them correctly so that you can see that full tutorial if you're wondering more about how you use these piping bags and couplers and how to hold your bag. I have a full tutorial on exactly how to hold your bag, where to use the pressure and all that, so I won't be redundant by saying it all over again. But let's put some buttercream down on our little boards, and we're gonna just press in with this 4B tip, and I'm just gonna go all the way around. It's a larger tip, so it's not gonna take as much to fill that little cake. I'm gonna press down that top cake, and I'm going to use a shell border for this one, which is just a squeeze. I'm doing a little fancier, so I'm kind of doing a backward motion and then pulling away as I come forward with that one. And then add the sprinkle. This is the 32 tip. It is also a French tip, which means it has all those serrated sides, just like the 4B, but it is the smaller standard size. So I'm just going to go all the way around. And also this would also make a really pretty top as well, but this is going to be in our middle because it creates a really cool middle there. And this is a petal tip. It's a 104. Oftentimes on a regular size cake, I would use my 124 petal tip, but I am just going to swap that tip out for my 104 smaller petal tip. Using the narrow end on the outside, I start at the top, let it come down, and then release pressure as I pull in. And then I'm going to swap that out, and I'm going to use a small round tip. This is a number 3. You start at the top, you let it touch at the top, and then you make sure it doesn't touch while you let it do its drop, and then you touch again to anchor it back to the top. And that's a really easy way to use a small round tip to add a little something to our border here. Then I'm going to swap that one out again and put the 32 back on. Now, a lot of times with these shells, I will pipe it downwards, but because of these smaller cakes, I'm using a slightly different look. So I'm going to start and I'm going to pipe inward because I want to bring in that border because, again, these are smaller cakes. So I'm just going to pipe it like a shell. Gives it that little backward motion and then in. And then I'm going to do one dot right in the middle and add the sprinkles. Then using that 32 tip again, I'm going to go back and forth using this very interesting motion, but I really like the look of it. It just goes, you go in, and then you go out, and then you go in, and these motions, they get a little easier as you practice a little bit. I use my practice piping sheets. I'll talk a little more about the practice piping sheets later, but the practice piping sheet really helps you get these motions down on just a practice sheet before you do it on a cake. And here I'm going to show you with the smaller tip. This is a 14. It's an open star tip, and it's just that back and forward motion that really gets simple the more you practice it. Just back and forward and back and forward. And then I'm just going to do a straight shell on the bottom, which is just pipe, let it build, and I slightly move my hand back as I let it build, and then pull forward, release the pressure, just a regular straight shell border there. And then I'm going to use the 32 again just to add 3 little dots on the top, and I'm going to use these little chocolate pearl candies to add a little bit of decoration and some sprinkles right on the top of that to make it all fancy. And this one is, I call it the rope. It's really just an S motion. And then you go into the tail of the last S and you keep going, and it makes it look like a rope. And that is also on the practice piping sheets that I'm going to tell you. If I can say practice piping. Sorry to say that really fast. Then sprinkles on that one. And then we're going to use back to the 4B, the large 4B tip, that's the large French tip. I'm using the E motion, but it's a sideways E motion so that it creates this really cool rope border around the top. It's really fancy looking and I love it. And with this large tip, it really makes it quite full, and so that's a really fun one. And then I'm just going to pipe in the center, let that pressure build, and then just pull right up. And that fills in that center because it's such a tiny little cake there. Okay, now we're going to use one of my favorite tips, the 1M. I'm just going to use a rosette, and we're going to do 3 of these. You pipe right in the center and then pipe around that center, pull away and release the pressure to make a rosette. Absolutely love rosettes. And then we're going to go ahead and add some sprinkles on that. And then I'm going to give you a little closer look at this. And oh, okay, don't do that. Oops, we'll have to redo that one later. So let's use the E motion with the 1M tip now, and that creates a different kind of rope, and oh, so fancy. And I'll try not to drop this cake. And as I was talking about those piping border tips, the practice piping sheets are all in my book, Icing on Top, buttercream exclusive cake decorating book, and I developed all those motions on my practice piping sheet so that you could practice it. And what I do is I put wax paper on this, or I print it out and I do a sheet protector or something, but it's really makes it simple for practicing those piping sheets. I'll put that link below, and I'm going to use some edible diamond dust from the Sugar Art store to make these really glitzy, fancy little cakes, and I love just adding that shine on with that, because here, take a look, you can kind of see that shimmer shine. Fancy little cakes. I love the Sugar Art store's diamond dust. So much fun there. Oh, add some sprinkles to this one too. Yeah, and they're diamond dust again. Yep, so these were really fun to make, so please subscribe to my channel and I'll put those links below for you.